Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Gagne. I currently teach at Penn Manor High School. I've been here since January of 2021. I teach agricultural science, so I do a realm of animal science, veterinary medicine, floriculture and landscape design, agricultural business and management, and then welding, and I dabble a little bit of engines and plumbing as needed too. I have a passion for horses. I grew up on a large farm in Connecticut where I did therapeutic riding. I taught lessons in that, as well as taught a course on equine management and assisted when I was younger. We took kids in from the inner city schools who were in Title I schools or labeled as high risk, and we went ahead and worked with them on the farm to try to get them some life skills to get a better start after high school. I currently teach 7th through 12th grade at Penn Manor, and I do it in a traditional and non-traditional way. I teach non-traditionally through a club that runs every 6 days at our middle schools, where I take 2 high school students down with me to teach about agricultural science, and I teach traditionally 9th through 12th grade. Prior experience with online learning. Online learning I've experienced as both a student and as an educator. At Penn State, I took virtual courses that mainly consisted of discussion board posts and some group projects. Group projects were definitely hard to do, but using Google Slides and Sheets where I was able to contribute as a team was making that easier. I also had a lot of lectures that were via Zoom meetings, and those Zoom meetings then had polls in them to kind of check for understanding as we went along, and the use of the chat box to ask questions of our TAs. I really liked the clicker questions in between. It felt like I was in class answering one of the clicker questions just like I would in class, but able to look and reflect back on the content to make sure I was following along with what was going on. When I was student taught, I also had to do blogs and use Twitter, not only to ask questions of educators, but to share my own experience, to give me some social platforms to work with, as well as start learning about digital citizenship. As an educator, I did student teach in spring of 2020, which was that great COVID year. But the school shut down on Friday. I student taught at Conrad Weiser Area High School, and on Monday we went to asynchronous learning. For asynchronous learning, I used a lot of Google Forms to have students check in and for attendance, but then I also started using like Mentimeter to go ahead and have students reflect on their social emotional level of where they were to see how they were managing themselves through this experience. I also created videos and were able to upload them. I had students create videos. I sent lab equipment home for students. For example, we made a casting of insects. So students went ahead and preserved their insects. They got a kit sent home to them, and we did it virtually online. They had to submit a video of it. Currently in my class, I consider myself to be a web-enhanced course, and I have an independent course that runs as a blended course. So my web-enhanced courses, I use Google Classroom to house everything. We share ideas there. We submit assignments there. It houses my documents, but we still do hands-on classroom activities as well. I do use a lot of simulations. I teach a lot of things related to animal production and veterinary medicine that can't be necessarily simulated on animals because of ethics. So things like grading beef carcasses for the USDA inspectors certifications, we do that as a simulation so students can act as if they are the USDA inspector without having live carcasses in my classroom. I also have students go and pretend that they are the CDC, and they go through a whole entire biosecurity hazard of what's going on in the scene to track disease control within farms. In my independent studies, I teach Veterinary Science 1 and Veterinary Science 2 as independent studies. Those 2 courses are more blended. The students have some labs that they're completing independently while they are in the classroom without my instruction, but they're also using that online platform to submit all their assignments, take their notes, really learn from. I have to organize that as if I were to organize any online class. And both of these classes are taught through Google Classroom. As well as my skills for self-audit, I think I really need to improve on online communication and my content knowledge. So online communication becomes a little tricky for me because of my tone. I kind of give this big monotone tone. I don't give a lot of expression. I'm very hard. Students might find it a little bit harsh. I also use a lot of jargon. I don't really slim things down for students to be able to pick out the most important parts. I give them every single detail and everything that I think could go wrong, and I don't leave that time for students to ask me questions if they need it. I just kind of put that information out there. I think in the future, as I'm looking to this, I'd like to give some sort of checklist of what can be done for the week. I'd like to have a little bit more of a base solid outline, and then maybe an additional form of like an example of student work for them to follow along with. As far as online content, for my self-knowledge, my content knowledge, I teach a wide variety of courses. So going from animal science to floriculture to business to welding, it gets a little bit gray of what I'm a master in and what I am proficient in. So because I don't have a mastery level skill in like welding, for example, creating that content knowledge becomes very hard for me. Putting that content out there where I am above all the honest person who knows everything and letting students learn from that content virtually becomes a little bit difficult when I'm trying to use this space that is not necessarily built for a course like welding. As far as proficient, I would say I'm proficient in passion and clear expectations. I think what I expect of students is very clear. When I am posting on Google Classroom, I have specific deadlines of when things need to get completed. They know where to turn them in. Every unit is its own little module with assignments numbered underneath it. So if we're working in Unit 1 of the skeletal system in Vet Science, 1.1 would be the first assignment, and that would go with the 1.1 reading and the 1.1 notes, 1.1 PowerPoints, all labeled in that format. My expectations also are when deadlines are due. For example, the Vet Science class has a journal reflection due every other Friday, so I keep a very regular schedule of what is being done in the class. We know that animals come in on Fridays, so on Fridays, whatever they're doing is going to reflect on whatever animal we have here for their lab to be done. So I kind of keep these different routines that help me get these clear expectations. And that's also to help foster classroom relationships and just a feeling of belongingness within our online community. As far as passion goes, I am very passionate about my work in general. I have a passion for agriculture and I have a passion for teaching agriculture to youth. I really like to see kids engage in agricultural sciences in whatever path field that they like, whether that's the mechanics field or the plumbing field or floriculture, whatever that may be. I just really like to help them find their roots in there. And for me, I really like also developing curriculum and manipulating things for specific needs of students. A girl in my Vet Science 2 class currently wants to work in large animal veterinary medicine, so I took out a lot of the small animal veterinary skills and replaced it with all large animal veterinary skills for her to be able to really hone in on what she wants to do after she leaves that course, instead of saying what should she know in general about veterinary medicine after she leaves that course. And I think that right there shows how making sure that kids are meeting the kids where they're at and what they want to do is passion in what I'm doing. I could just give her all the same thing that I've been doing the last 3 years, but instead I manipulated it to help her and meet her distinct needs. Online teaching and face-to-face teaching have very similar effective strategies. I've picked 2 examples from the reading of organization and flexibility. I think that when we're looking at effective teaching skills and strategies, these are the same whether we're in person or online, but they just look a little bit differently. So for example, organization of materials online means chunking information into units that can easily be understood by the learner when they're online, and making sure that the space of that online platform is usable. So for me, I have my topics, and underneath my topics, like I mentioned, they're all number coded based off of the assignments or notes or whatever we're learning within that unit to meet the different standards. I also have a section just for their work-based experience course. So part of my classes, of all my classes, are a workspace experience. There's a section in there for them to find all the documentation and paperwork that they need for that, and the links to my job training website. I also have sections within my online platform just for like syllabus and guidance information and the agricultural program information. I use Google Classroom as a way to, again, house these things in my classes, but also as an organization method for this. When I'm doing my online courses completely, like my independent studies in Vet Science 1 and 2, I make sure that it's organized by the content, and then they get a email each week with their agenda for the week. So keeping that agenda very organized with hyperlinks to different tabs and different assignments within the Google Classroom is very helpful for my students to be able to keep on track of what we're doing. In terms of flexibility, I think of as we need to be sure that we are representing our students in our diverse populations. We need to be differentiating instruction. We need to be able to make sure that we're adapting and modifying assignments and readings and tasks as we see necessary for our students to meet our students where they're at. But in our online platform, the reading really kind of connected back to technology has glitches. And we as a teacher need to be flexible and be able to make sure that we are okay with if Wi-Fi goes down for 2 days, now what do we do in this online platform? Well, work is not going to get done as much. We might need to scone back and do just the key points from that unit if we're on a time crunch, or we might need to extend deadlines. Our schedules might need to be flexible. The class is open 24/7, but maybe I'm working 3 or 4 hours in the morning a little bit in the afternoon and a little bit later at night to make sure that I'm meeting all my students where they're at with their time schedules of work and other classes and when they're able to complete this course. I also think of flexibility as student interpretation of the communication that I'm providing. I said earlier that communication was definitely more of a weakness of mine, but I need to make sure that I'm being flexible with how do students interpret it. Just because I post a rubric in an example does not mean that that translates exactly over to what I want the student to do. And I need to be okay for interpretation and answer questions and give that feedback to students as I see fit. Challenging with online courses, I'm going to go back to pages 14 and 15 of the reading and discuss the content again. I teach a wide range of topics, as I've mentioned, and a lot of these things are hands-on. So having students and being engaged with these hands-on things such as welding or surgical skills becomes a little bit complicated when we move to an online platform. Teachers can have little control over the curriculum that they teach when we are providing this online curricula. Sometimes it's pre-made with little room for flexible instruction from the teacher. So adapting lessons is important to me to make sure that I'm meeting what society needs in these trade fields. For example, I don't want to teach TIG welding to a farm kid who wants to go back and work on the farm for welding because TIG welding is not going to help hold farm equipment together. But in an online curriculum, TIG welding might be part of that curriculum. So I want to make sure that I still have the ability to adapt to what the needs of my community and society are around me. And also, I just want to bring back up that I teach a wide range of things, and having the mastery level of content knowledge in all these areas is hard for me. So finding ways to engage students in online learning and having them understand the why of what we're doing becomes a little bit murky for me. For example, in my welding course, which is we're in the shop every single day, providing an online instruction during COVID was super hard because the students didn't understand why we were doing the theory work. What we were doing online helped them when they had their 2 days a week in the shop, but it was hard to get that why part across to something that was so hands-on and so needed to be done in person. So overall, I would say that content would be a challenge for me. This week's module was very interesting, and I look forward to module 3. Oh, wait.